When I went to the Vatican a number of years ago, I directly asked His Holiness Pope Francis to move forward on apologizing, on asking for forgiveness, on restitution, on making these records available. And we're still seeing resistance from the church, possibly from the church in Canada. I think it's going to be a really important moment for all of us, particularly Catholics across the country, to reach out in our local parishes, to reach out to bishops and cardinals, and make it clear that we expect the church to take up and step up and take responsibility for its role in this and be there to help in the grieving and the healing, including with records, that is necessary. It's something a number of other churches, the United Church and others, have done. It's something we are all still waiting for the Catholic Church to do.
Well, for more on this story, we can speak to Nicole Schabus. She's a law professor at Thompson Rivers University and is joining us now from Tk'emlups in Canada. Professor Schabus, thanks for being with us here on TRT World. Let's first pick up where Justin Trudeau left off there with this idea that the Catholic Church is reluctant to address this issue. Why may that be the case?
Well, there's actually two things. The Catholic Church is the only church that was actively involved in the residential school system in Canada, running schools, that has not issued an apology. And the second thing is they have not released the records. Why do they do that? You're asking a lawyer. Probably because of liabilities, but it is, I would suggest, both a bad legal and moral stance to take, and really not justifiable in light of, I would say even the teachings of the church, but very clearly in light of indigenous teachings that would require that you take responsibility. And obviously, when we are looking at the discovery of a mass grave at a Catholic Church-run school, where they do have the records, they should be releasing those records to the respective Indigenous peoples. And there's also a role for the Canadian state, who can force them.
Well, there certainly is, and I'm glad you did mention that L word, liability, because I did presume that was the case with this. And I understand that you are either in Tk'emlups or not far from Tk'emlups. That's, of course, where this discovery was made. Can you just tell us, how's the community reacted to what we found out just a week ago of those 215 bodies?
Yes, so Thompson Rivers University is located in Secwepemc territory, and actually right in the community of the Tk'emlups, the Secwepemc, where, so that you're seeing on screen, where the mass grave was located with ground radar. And so, yes, we are located in that very community, and we have the privilege of living in this territory. Every year, we take all first-year law students to learn from survivors about the history and legacy of residential school. And I can tell you, this is all palpable right now. We always teach our students and the survivors talk about the intergenerational effects, but you can feel it. It's affecting everybody, from the elders who are being flashed back to being little children at the school, to their grandchildren, to non-Indigenous peoples who are also thinking about how they can best express their solidarity in a moment like that without overwhelming a community who does not carry the responsibility for what happened, but who is taking the lead and the leadership on resolving this ongoing, not just human rights violation, it's an act of genocide. There can no longer be a debate if this was cultural genocide when you have physical mass graves, the forceful removal of Indigenous children from their families with the intention of taking their culture away is genocide under the Genocide Convention, under the United Nations Genocide Convention. And this has to be addressed. And the fact that there are, children that have never come back to their families, that were buried in an entirely, obviously, inappropriate way, and that now the remains have to be dealt with. And there's Indigenous laws in regard to this, in regard to how the remains are properly dealt with, how ceremony is going to have to be done. So the Secwepemc people and Tk'emlups to Secwepemc really has to be in the lead on this. And, the Prime Minister of Canada is not the first one to call for an apology of the church. Mm-hmm. It's indigenous. And I've just worked with European support groups who have just put together a letter to the Pope to again remind him to apologize, not only for the residential schools, to also repeal the papal bulls, which still are in effect, and around the doctrines of discovery, which resulted in the dispossession of indigenous lands. They are, from the 1500s, and they're still legally in effect. And so the Pope has been called upon to also repeal those and to release the records regarding all the children that were in the Catholic schools. And let me say one more thing. So there was a commission, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was put in place in Canada, but it was not solely put in place by Canada. It was put in place as part of a settlement agreement between the survivors who had to take the state. So Canada, that Justin Trudeau as the Prime Minister is speaking to, and the churches, they took the churches and the state to court. And then they collectively agreed to this commission, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission tried to get to the bottom of the issue of the children who haven't returned and weren't given access to the records. So it's the Chief Commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Mercy, who called already for the release of these records, etc.
Plenty of work still to do. Okay, Professor Nicole Schabus from Thompson Rivers University, thanks for your analysis.